Introducing YouTube memberships, a fun way to support the channel while getting some exclusive perks. Click the join button to become a member now and get benefits like badges next to your name on videos, behind-the-scenes photos, advantages during the live trivia game, discounts on merchandise, private one-on-one video chats, the ability to request future video topics, and exclusive 8 to 10 minute videos on the history of the NFL. And now, on with our feature presentation. The 1973 season was, shall we say, an absolute disaster for the New York Giants. In fact, some would argue that it was the worst season in franchise history. And if you were one of those people who believe that, I'm not going to say no. Between moving stadiums midway through the season to the Yale Bowl in Connecticut, the disaster of a quarterback situation at the start of the season, where the starting quarterback quit the team because he wasn't getting enough playing time, only to then rejoin the team and become the starter immediately after, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, and the 2-11-1 record that resulted in the team finishing with the second worst record in football. Everything about this season was just absolutely brutal. And one of the reasons for the disaster of the season, as you've been able to tell from these lowlights, was the atrocious play of their defense. And I truly mean atrocious. Over the course of the 14-game season, the Giants boasted one of the worst defenses in football, as they allowed 362 points, or 25.9 points per game. This was inside the bottom 5 of the league in points allowed, which is obviously not good. And it's not like it started out that way. Over the first 4 games of the season, the defense was pretty respectable, allowing 65 points, and even having a game against the Oilers where they forced 4 turnovers and allowed just 6 first downs. But over the final 10 games of the season, where they allowed 30 points per game, yeah, that was not their finest moment. And if their defense was so bad as it was, imagine how bad it would be if there was the possibility that the opposing team had their playbook, knew everything that was coming, and knew all their plays and all their signals and whatnot. Well, during Week 8 of the 1973 season, in this absolutely disastrous year of theirs, that's exactly what happened. Sort of. Because in 1973, the Oakland Raiders may have known everything that the New York Giants were about to do in one of the most bizarre cheating and spying scandals you've never heard of. Because this is the story behind one of the strangest cheating controversies in NFL history, if you want to call it that. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, and how exactly something bizarre like this could have happened in the first place, we need some context to understand how the game itself went, the importance of it, and just how much of a bloodbath it was. It's November 4th, 1973. It's Week 8 of the NFL season, and as we're officially in the second half of this 14-week season, we've got an interconference battle on our hands between the New York Giants and the Oakland Raiders, in what is the first time ever that the Giants are playing in Oakland. For the Giants, this game is completely and utterly meaningless. They sit at 1-5-1 with a 6-game winless streak, and even if they win out the rest of the way to finish 8-5-1, it probably won't be enough to make the playoffs, so their season is dead in the water. It's a big deal for Oakland though, as they sit at 4-2-1, one game atop the Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos for the AFC West lead. So not only do they need to win this one to keep their hold on first place in the division, but they're expected to win this one, as they are the superior team on paper in every sense of the word. For what it's worth, Vegas thinks the same, as the Raiders enter this one as 10-point favorites. But I don't even think Vegas could have expected the bloodbath that was about to unfold. Because to put it bluntly, this game was not even close. By the time the final whistle blew, the Raiders, in front of their home fans, were victorious by a final score of 42-0, shutting out the Giants by 6 touchdowns. Any stat you want, the Raiders absolutely outclassed the Giants in. Oakland nearly tripled New York's output in first downs, winning 28-11. Oakland nearly quadrupled New York's output in rushing yards, winning 211-57. Whereas the Giants had 2.3 yards per carry, Oakland had 5.7, playing in a completely different stratosphere. Oakland forced 4 turnovers, won the total yardage battle 439 to 185, and had one of their best games ever from a pass defense standpoint, with New York's quarterbacks in Norm Steen and Randy Johnson combining to go 11 for 36, completing 30% of their passes for 152 yards, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a passer rating of 5.5, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. Heck, Randy Johnson, one of the 2 quarterbacks who played, had a passer rating by himself of 0.0, which is as low as you can possibly go. It was that bad, folks. There's no way to sugarcoat it. There's no other way to describe it. It was that bad. I think the quote that best sums up this game came from John Jeanson, a writer for Newsday who worked at the paper for 44 years. He wrote many sentences over his long and illustrious career as a sports writer for the paper, but there aren't too many better than this one. Said Jeanson on the game, "The Giants' first mistake, after they won the coin toss, was electing to receive the kickoff. They should have elected to leave, because both the Raiders and Giants already knew who would win." I mean, that is just brutal. That is savage. But he's 100% right. If ever the phrase ugly with a capital U applied, it was for this game that you've been watching this whole time. Because man, that Giants performance truly was ugly with a capital U. Which raises the question, why was this game so bad? Yes, the Giants were a really bad team, and the Raiders were a really good team. But 42-0, where the 2 teams look like they're playing completely different sports, and where even head coach John Madden wonders aloud what the heck he just witnessed from his opponent? That's something else entirely. And maybe it's because the Raiders had the Giants' plays and knew exactly what was coming. Because the real storyline from this game wasn't what happened on the field, but rather what happened off of it. You see, because the game was in Oakland, the Giants had to fly out and stay at a hotel in the area, because you're not flying out the day of the game, and you're not just going to sleep in the airport. And when you stay at a hotel in an opposing city, there's always a pretty high likelihood that people, especially people that are working, are going to be in the hotel that are fans of the home team. You fly down for a Jaguars game in Jacksonville and stay at a Jaguars hotel, odds are some employees there are going to be fans of the Jaguars. Well, when the Giants flew out to Oakland and stayed at the hotel on Friday, at some point, defensive coordinator Jim Garrett left his room. And in his room was exactly what you would expect. Clothes for the stay, the necessary toiletries, and any papers and information he might need with him for the game. Sure enough, one person who worked at the hotel was a huge Raiders fan, and decided that it would be a good idea to call a buddy of his who was also a Raider fan, and orchestrate a plot to break into Garrett's room, steal the papers, and then try and give them to the Raiders, or use it as some sort of blackmail. We don't know who this employee is, but just as a side note, not that I'm advocating that any hotel employee does this, because this is a crime, and you'll have way bigger problems than just being fired from your job and being blackballed from the industry. But if you're going to do this, why against the freaking New York Giants? Seriously? The Giants were on a 6-game winless streak. The Raiders were in a really good spot. And with or without the information, they were going to win this game and be massive favorites to do so. Save it for a playoff game or something. Save it for a game against the Steelers. It's like if I wanted to do this for the Florida Gators. I would try and do it for the Georgia game. Not for the guarantee game against the FCS school they were going to smash anyways. But I digress. The point is that these Raider fans, with neither of them being identified from what I could gather, but with one of them being an employee and the other one being a close friend of the employee, broke into Garrett's room and took Garrett's defensive play sheet detailing his entire defensive game plan. The first step was to contact the Raiders and call them and say that they had the entire Giants game plan. And to the credit of the Raiders and head coach John Madden, when they picked up the phone, their response was something along the lines of, What the heck are you talking about? They didn't take the information, knowing that this was, well, illegal. This was cheating. In fact, the Raiders were so disgusted about this entire thing that afterwards, John Madden called up Giants head coach Alex Webster to let him know that these two lunatics just broke into the defensive coordinator's room and claimed to have the entire defensive game plan. So the Raiders did everything right here in this spot. The league investigated the situation, found that the Raiders did nothing wrong, found that these fans were just lunatics that were not working with the organization at all, and found that the Raiders, upon hearing this information, took the appropriate channels. But hang on, because it gets crazier. Because these fans didn't stop there once the Raiders didn't take the papers. They had come too far to walk away empty-handed, especially now that there was a phone number on record that could possibly get them charged with a crime. If the Raiders wouldn't take it, maybe the Giants would take it back. It's time for part 2, blackmail. Because after stealing the papers on Friday, on Saturday, the men got in touch with Alex Webster. You might be wondering how the heck these two men just happened to have the phone number of the head coach. My guess is that the employee knew where everyone was staying, so he just called up his room. And their demand was simple. Give us tickets to the game, and we'll return the papers. If not, we'll circulate them. Now, this is where it gets a bit confusing, because Garrett downplayed the importance of the papers. But Webster was so concerned about this that he caved into their demands and got them 2 tickets to the game, even though this game was in Oakland. So how Webster would even have access to 2 extra tickets, I have no clue. Again, this whole situation is beyond bizarre. This is 1970s football for you. Because you would think that this would be the end of the story now, right? The blackmail operation works, the 2 people get tickets to the game, and everything works out. Except for the fact that after the Giants caved into their demands, thinking that the papers would never get out again, turns out, in between Friday night when they were stolen and Saturday when the blackmail was made, the 2 men drove all the way out to Lake Tahoe, nearly 200 miles away in Nevada, reproduced the papers, and gave them out to people in the casino. I have no idea as to why this happened, because this seems to be the most convoluted plan ever. But the men went from Oakland to Lake Tahoe just to give out papers, and then go back to Oakland, as if anyone in Lake Tahoe would be able to do anything with the Giants' defensive game plan. Especially before the internet, when it's not like you could just post it online and have someone on the Raiders see it. Maybe they were just trying to exchange the papers for a few hands at tables? Maybe they were trying to get the lines to change in the most convoluted way possible? Honestly, I have no idea. The whole Lake Tahoe subplot is bizarre. Either way, 2 Raider fans steal the game plans of the Giants defense in order to help out their team. The Raiders tell them to go away and that they're committing a crime, so they try to blackmail Alex Webster into free tickets to the game, all while going to Lake Tahoe, getting a trip out of this, and making copies of the game plan to redistribute to random people in the casino. If your head is spinning from this, I don't blame you. Honestly, I don't blame you at all, because this plan was just completely bizarre in every sense of the word. Like I said before, the 1973 season for the New York Giants was not a good one at all, as they ended the season 2-11-1 and only won one of their remaining games after the game against these 2 teams behind me right here, which was quite easily their worst showing of the season. Jim Garrett would get fired after the 1973 season as the defensive coordinator and would never be a defensive coordinator in the NFL again, because that 1973 season for him and his defense was absolutely brutal. I'll put it this way. When you have 2 numbers, one of the numbers is the number of times that your plays got stolen, and the other number is the amount of games you won past the month of September, and you subtract the 2 numbers, and you get 0, that is a really bad thing. That is really, really bad. Garrett said afterwards what I think everyone else was thinking, because he wasn't making any excuses for the loss, saying, let's face it, no matter what was stolen, it had no bearing on our losing 42-0. And do I think the Raiders stole the papers or knew anything? Absolutely not. Everyone in the organization denied it. The NFL found nothing with their investigation, and they even informed the Giants that something fishy was up and to be on the lookout for it. But this incident truly summed up how bad New York's season went in 1973. Because in 1973, not only did the Giants lose their stadium, and not only did the Giants lose games, but they lost their papers as well. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.